This is not a book about chasing wealth. It's about becoming the magnet that draws it effortlessly. You'll uncover the forgotten wisdom that money, like a songbird, lands only on the open hand. As you listen, you'll awaken to the truth. Money is magnetic, and so are you. Money is magnetic. Introduction. In your hands rests not just a book, but a whisper from the ages. A truth older than empires, yet as alive as breath at dawn. Within these chapters unfolds a sacred remembering that true wealth is not won by pursuit, nor gathered by force, but drawn like the tide to a moonlit shore. By presence, by grace, by the flowering of your inner light. Through the perfume markets of ancient Alexandria, past the wind-sung dunes of Chaldea, through the marble stillness of forgotten temples and the mirrored chambers of Damascus, the wise have spoken in riddles and dreams. They taught that prosperity is not a prize to be captured, but a stream to be unblocked, that fear dams it, but openness lets it flow. Words carry power. Gratitude spins golden thread. Trust lays the unseen foundation on which all treasure rests. Beloved listener, your hurried grasp only drives abundance away. Your tight fists silence its music, and your restless counting dims its glow. But as the lotus opens to the sun without striving, so too must you open in stillness and trust, and allow prosperity to find you. Let your thoughts be polished like sacred stones, your actions glide like water over silk, and your heart stand as wide and welcoming as the morning sky. Then shall money, subtle as wind and sure as light, return to its source. So listen now as though seated at the feet of sages, and let these teachings fall upon you like rain upon fertile soil. For you are not the pursuer of gold, but its origin, not the seeker, but the flame that draws all good things near. This is the beginning of your great remembering, that money is magnetic, and it has always been drawn to you. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Part 1, The Awakening. Chapter 1, The Backwards Chase. In ancient Alexandria's bustling marketplace, where spice-laden winds carried whispers of fortune across merchant stalls, Kevin Rodriguez counted his dwindling coins for the third time that morning. His once prosperous trading house had fallen into shadow, despite his increasingly desperate efforts to chase passing caravans and secure ever larger deals. More inventory means more profit, he muttered, his hands trembling as he reached for his last remaining pearls. Just one more deal, one more venture. How curious, when came a voice like wind-blown sand, that the harder you grasp, the faster it slips away. Kevin turned to find a peculiar figure seated cross-legged beside his stall, Christopher Sullivan, known throughout Alexandria's warren-like streets as either madman or sage. Despite owning nothing but the simple robe he wore, Christopher's eyes held a gleam of something that looked suspiciously like abundance. What would a beggar know of commerce? Kevin scoffed, though something in Christopher's serene smile made him lean closer. Watch, Christopher said, producing a bright yellow songbird from his robe's folds. As Kevin stared, Christopher opened his palm. Instead of flying away, the bird hopped playfully around his hand, singing sweetly. Now you try, Christopher offered, gesturing for Kevin to hold out his hands. The moment the bird landed in Kevin's trembling palms, he clutched it desperately. The bird immediately struggled and broke free, disappearing into the market shadows. Abundance, Christopher said softly, is like that bird. Chase it, and it takes flight. Grasp it, and it struggles free. But remain perfectly still, perfectly at peace. He held out his hand again, and remarkably, the same bird returned, perching contentedly on his finger. Kevin felt something ancient and true stir within his heart. But how can I attract prosperity by not pursuing it? The same way flowers attract bees, not by chasing them, but by blossoming fully into what they are. Your very pursuit creates the energy of lack that repels what you seek. In that moment, Kevin understood. All his frantic chasing had been pushing abundance away, like a man running after his own shadow. You who read these words know this truth. Wealth flows not to those who pursue it most desperately, but to those who align with its natural current. Like water, it cannot be grasped, only channeled. Like breath, it cannot be forced, only allowed. Practice. For the next 7 days, whenever you feel the urge to chase or grasp at money, become like the still palm that the songbird trusts. Release your desperate pursuit. Instead, sink into the knowing that abundance like air surrounds you always. Notice how prosperity begins flowing precisely when you stop chasing it. For in the great paradox of magnetic wealth, it is only when we cease our backwards chase that abundance can finally catch us. Chapter 2. Words that Weave Gold. In the great library of Alexandria, where scrolls held the whispered wisdom of ages, court scribe Amanda Taylor sat hunched over her parchment, recording the kingdom's latest financial woes. Her quill scratched bitter phrases: insufficient funds, mounting debts, dwindling resources. As she wrote these words of lack, she failed to notice how the ink seemed to darken and spread like tiny shadows across the page. But Michael Anderson, the library's enigmatic keeper of ancient texts, observed with knowing eyes from between towering shelves of weathered scrolls. Interesting, he mused, approaching her desk with a scroll so old it seemed to glow with its own inner light. You write of the kingdom's poverty with such conviction. Amanda looked up, startled. I merely record what is true. Ah, Michael smiled, unrolling the ancient scroll before her. But what is truth, if not the stories we weave with our words? The scroll revealed elaborate hieroglyphs that seemed to shimmer and dance in the lamplight. These are the oldest financial records in our collection, he explained. See how even in years of drought, the scribes wrote of abundant potential and flowing prosperity. Their words became like golden threads, weaving reality itself. To demonstrate, Michael took Amanda's quill and drew a simple spiral on a fresh parchment. As he wrote endless abundance along its curves, the ink gleamed with an otherworldly sheen. Every word you write about wealth becomes a thread in the tapestry of your experience, he said softly. Choose them with care. Amanda's eyes widened as she watched her earlier words of lack literally fade on their parchment, while Michael's spiral seemed to pulse with living light. The ancestors knew, he continued, that we do not record reality. We create it, one word at a time. You who read these words understand. The stories you tell about money are not mere descriptions. They are incantations. Every thought you think, every word you speak about abundance becomes a thread in the fabric of your financial reality. Practice for the next 7 days. Become the conscious author of your prosperity story. Keep a small scroll or journal. Each morning, Write 3 sentences about wealth using only words that weave golden possibilities. Notice how I'm attracting more abundance daily feels different in your body than I never have enough. Watch your words as carefully as an ancient scribe, for they are not merely marking your path to prosperity, they are creating it. In the great library of existence, you are both author and protagonist of your abundant story. Let every word you write, every tale you tell become a golden thread in the magnificent tapestry of your prosperity. Chapter 3: Shaping Destiny. In a humble village where morning mists clung to clay-stained walls, potter Sarah Mitchell sat before her wheel, hands trembling with frustration. For the 3rd time that morning, her vessels collapsed into formless lumps, despite her determined attempts to force them into shape. "The clay refuses to yield," she muttered, wiping sweat from her brow. "Just like prosperity itself." "Interesting," came a melodious voice, "that you would battle with both clay and abundance in the same manner." Sarah turned to find Daniel Rodriguez, the mysterious clay merchant known for his vessels that seemed to glow with inner light. He stood watching, his eyes holding ancient wisdom beneath their earthen warmth. "Here," he said, settling beside her wheel. "Before touching the clay, feel its nature." His weathered hands hovered over the formless lump, barely making contact. Clay, like wealth, has its own spirit. Force it and it rebels. Fight it and it resists. But listen. His fingers moved with impossible gentleness, barely whispering against the clay's surface. To Sarah's amazement, the material seemed to sigh and soften beneath his touch. "Your hands still carry the tension of your struggle with prosperity," Daniel observed. "The clay feels your resistance and mirrors it back. Watch." He guided her hands to hover over the clay without touching. "Feel the warmth rising from it, like sun-baked earth. Now, before shaping outer form, let your inner resistance dissolve." As Sarah's hands relaxed, something shifted within her chest, an ancient knot of scarcity loosening. When she finally touched the clay, it moved like liquid light beneath her fingers, rising effortlessly into a vessel of extraordinary beauty. Daniel smiled. The ancestors knew that all creation follows this law. Whether shaping clay or calling forth abundance, we must first become as soft and receptive as that which we wish to form. You who read these words understand. Your resistance to prosperity is like tense hands fighting yielding clay. The more you struggle against your apparent lack, the more that very struggle shapes continued scarcity. Practice. For the next 7 days, before any action involving money or resources, pause. Feel the tension of lack in your body, the subtle fight against what is. Let your inner resistance dissolve like clay softening under gentle hands. Only then, from this state of yielding receptivity, engage with the material world. For in the ancient wisdom of the potter's wheel, all lasting forms, be they vessels of clay or vessels of abundance, arise not from force, but from the perfect harmony between that which shapes and that which is shaped. Chapter 4: Counting What Matters. In the rolling hills where morning dew sparkled like scattered diamonds, young shepherd Jason Phillips paced anxiously between his grazing sheep, counting each one for the 5th time since dawn. His fingers worried smooth grooves into the counting stones he carried, while his eyes darted constantly between the animals as if they might vanish like morning mist. 97, 98. He muttered, his brow furrowed with worry. Where is 99? There must be 99. The more desperately you count them, came a voice like wind through ancient olive trees, the more your flock shrinks before your very eyes. Jason turned to find Timothy Garcia, the legendary herdsman whose vast flocks seemed to multiply by some mysterious magic. The elder shepherd sat upon a weathered stone, his staff planted in the earth beside him, eyes twinkling with amused wisdom. "Watch your sheep now," Timothy gestured. "See how they draw away from your anxious energy. Your very counting pushes away what you seek to secure." To demonstrate, Timothy closed his eyes and grew perfectly still. Gradually, sheep from both their flocks began drifting toward him, drawn by his peaceful presence. "But how will I know if I'm prospering if I don't count them constantly?" Jason asked, his fingers still clicking stones together. Timothy smiled. "Did you count your breaths today, or trust they would continue? Did you count the blades of grass before letting your sheep graze, or trust in the field's abundance?" He reached into his pouch and pulled out a handful of seeds, letting them scatter in the wind. The great shepherd provides by natural law, not anxious calculation. Your counting is like trying to count stars while missing the majesty of the night sky. As Jason watched the seeds dance away on the breeze, something ancient and true stirred in his heart. He let his counting stones fall from suddenly peaceful hands. You who read these words understand. Just as a shepherd's anxious counting disturbs the very flock he watches, your constant measuring of wealth disrupts prosperity's natural flow. The universe's abundance, like a flock of sheep, multiplies not through fearful observation, but through trusting stewardship. Practice for the next 7 days. Resist the urge to constantly check your resources. Instead of counting money, count moments of gratitude. Instead of calculating lack, calculate blessings. Notice how abundance, like sheep, to a peaceful shepherd, naturally gravitates toward those who trust in life's endless provision. For in the eternal pastures of prosperity, those who count their blessings rather than their lacks find their flocks mysteriously multiplying under heaven's generous gaze. Chapter 5, The Golden Thread. In the misty valleys where dawn's first light transformed dewdrops into diamonds, Master Weaver Melissa Rodriguez sat at her ancient loom, her fingers moving through familiar patterns that somehow felt empty. Though her tapestries were sought across 7 kingdoms, lately each piece seemed to lack the luminous quality that once made them magical. "Your threads are perfect," she muttered to herself, "but they don't sing anymore." "Because you weave with skill," came a melodious voice, "but have forgotten to weave with gratitude." Melissa turned to find Ryan Martinez, the mysterious thread merchant whose rare golden spools were said to capture sunlight itself. He stood in her doorway, his simple robe somehow shimmering with threads invisible to ordinary eyes. "Watch," he said, approaching her loom. From his pouch, he drew a thread that seemed spun from pure light. "Before I place each thread, I thank it for its gift." His fingers moved with reverent grace, and where the golden strand touched her tapestry, the entire piece began to glow. "But how can simple gratitude create such magic?" Melissa asked, mesmerized. Ryan smiled, his eyes twinkling. "Gratitude itself is the unseen golden thread that weaves through all abundance." He guided her hands to hover over her work. "Close your eyes. Feel thankful for each thread you already have." As Melissa expressed genuine gratitude for her simplest materials, wool, cotton, silk, something extraordinary happened. Her existing tapestry began to shimmer with an inner light, threads of gold seemingly appearing from nowhere to weave themselves into the pattern. "The ancestors knew," Ryan said softly, "that gratitude is not a response to abundance, but its very source. Each thankful thought becomes an invisible golden thread, pulling more beauty into the tapestry of our lives." You who read these words understand, like a master weaver's loom, your life is threaded with countless blessings awaiting recognition. Each moment of genuine gratitude becomes a golden strand in your prosperity's fabric, attracting more threads of abundance to join the pattern. Practice for the next 7 days. Become a grateful weaver of your reality. Each morning, hold in your hand something you already possess, no matter how humble. Thank it with complete sincerity. Watch how this simple practice begins weaving threads of gold through every aspect of your life. For in the eternal pattern of abundance, gratitude is the mysterious golden thread that transforms ordinary moments into tapestries of prosperity's light. Chapter 6. Casting without attachment. In a coastal village where dawn painted the waves with liquid gold, seasoned fisherman Matthew Lewis stood at his boat's edge, gripping his nets with white-knuckled determination. For the 3rd consecutive moon, his catches had been meager despite casting his nets with increasing desperation. "The harder I try," he muttered, hurling another net into the gleaming waters, "the emptier they return." "Interesting," came a voice like distant surf, "that you would grasp at abundance with such tight fists." Matthew turned to find Jennifer Campbell, the mysterious keeper of the ancient stone dock, known for her uncanny ability to predict where schools of fish would appear. She sat cross-legged on weathered planks, weaving something invisible between her relaxed fingers. "Watch the pelicans," she gestured toward birds gliding effortlessly above the waves. "See how they dive without doubt, without desperate need." As if orchestrated, a pelican plunged into the sea, emerging with a silver fish gleaming in its beak. "Here!" Jennifer rose, approaching his boat. "Before casting again, feel the ocean's rhythm." She guided his hands to hover over the water's surface. "The sea gives freely, but retreats from those who grab at her gifts. Like a shy lover, abundance requires gentle courtship, not desperate pursuit." She demonstrated, lifting his net with impossible lightness. Her cast seemed more like a dance than a throw, the net opening like a flower upon the waves. When she drew it back, fish sparkled within its strands like living stars. "Your nets carry the weight of your worry," Jennifer observed. "The fish feel your fear and swim deeper. Watch." She taught him to cast with the tide's natural flow, his movements becoming like water itself. With each relaxed throw, his nets returned heavier until his boat rode low with abundance. "The ancient ones knew," Jennifer smiled, "that all gifts from the sea come to those who cast their nets with trust rather than tension. You who read these words understand. Your desperate grasp at prosperity is like tight nets that frighten away the very abundance you seek. The more you clutch at success with anxious hands, the more it slips through your fingers like startled fish. Practice for the next 7 days before any action intended to attract prosperity. Pause. Feel the desperate tension in your movements, the subtle grabbing at results. Let your actions flow like nets cast with peaceful confidence. Trust that abundance, like schools of fish, naturally swims toward those who move in harmony with life's tides. For in the eternal ocean of prosperity, it is not the force of our casting, but the grace of our allowing that brings forth the greatest catches. Chapter 7. Building abundance. In a mountain village where morning light painted ancient stones in honeyed hues, carpenter Stephen Edwards labored frantically to construct homes that seemed to crumble faster than he could build them. Despite his skilled hands and finest materials, each dwelling developed mysterious cracks within days. "The joints are perfect," he muttered, examining his latest failure. "The wood is sound. Why do they keep falling?" "Because you build visible walls," came a voice, like rustling autumn leaves, "before laying invisible foundations." Stephen turned to find Rachel Morris, the legendary architect whose structures were said to last centuries. She knelt beside a foundation stone, her fingers tracing patterns only she could see. "Come," she beckoned, "place your hand here." When Stephen touched the stone, she asked, "What do you feel?" "Nothing," he admitted, "just cold stone." Rachel smiled. "Exactly. You build with materials you can see, but ignore the invisible elements that give them strength." She retrieved a curious tool, a plumb line made of crystal. As it dangled, it seemed to sing with a strange resonance. "Before I place a single stone," she demonstrated, "I align the site with prosperity's natural laws." The crystal hummed louder as she moved it through specific points. "A house must harmonize with Earth's abundance flows, just as wealth must align with your inner worth." She guided Stephen through the ruins of his latest project. "See these cracks? They follow the same patterns as the doubts in your heart. Each fear about your worth becomes a fault line in prosperity's foundation." To demonstrate, she began a new foundation, first drawing sacred geometries in the soil. As she worked, the very stones seemed to hum with potential. The ancients knew that all lasting abundance begins with invisible preparation. Your belief in your value is the bedrock upon which prosperity builds its home. You who read these words understand, like a house requiring proper foundations, your prosperity cannot stand firmly until you lay the invisible groundwork of self-worth. External success built upon internal doubt will always develop cracks. Practice. For the next 7 days, before any effort to build material success, strengthen your inner foundation. Each morning, place your hands upon your heart and declare, "I am worthy of enduring abundance." Feel this truth sink deep into your being like foundation stones into fertile soil. For in the eternal architecture of prosperity, lasting wealth can only be built upon the unshakable foundation of knowing your true value. Chapter 8, Seasons of Prosperity. In the fertile valley where ancient terraces climbed like golden stairs to the heavens, farmer Nicole Parker stood amid her withering fields, desperately willing her crops to grow faster. Despite tending her plants day and night, speaking urgent prayers over each seedling, her harvest grew more meager with each passing season. "Grow," she commanded the reluctant shoots, pressing her palms into the soil. "The village needs this food." "Interesting," came a voice like wind through wheat, "that you think you can force what nature freely gives." Nicole turned to find Joshua Allen, the mysterious seed merchant, whose offerings were said to yield impossible harvests. He knelt beside a failing cornstalk, his weathered hands cradling a single grain. "Tell me," he said, placing the seed in her palm, "can you command this to sprout before its time?" Nicole stared at the seed, feeling foolish. "Of course not." Joshua smiled. "Yet you try to force abundance from the universe before its season." He gestured to her stressed crops. "Look how they shrink from your anxious touch, like children from an overeager parent." From his robes he produced a handful of earth that seemed to shimmer. "Plant this," he instructed. But first, close your eyes and feel the natural timing of growth. As Nicole's hand sank into the soil, Joshua spoke softly. The ancients knew that crops, like coins, have their own seasons. Winter's rest is as crucial as summer's abundance. Fighting nature's rhythm only exhausts the soil of your spirit. He guided her through the fields, teaching her to sense each plant's natural timing. Under his instruction, she learned to tend her crops with patient trust rather than desperate force. Gradually, her withered plants began to straighten, reaching toward the sun with renewed vigor. See, Joshua gestured to the strengthening stalks. Abundance, like grain, grows not through force, but through alignment with its season. You who read these words understand. Your prosperity has its own divine timing. Just as no amount of demanding can ripen fruit before its moment, no desperate action can force wealth's natural unfolding. Every winter of lack holds within it the seeds of future abundance and practice. For the next 7 days, tend your prosperity like a wise farmer. Each morning, place your hands upon the earth and attune to nature's rhythm. Notice where you're forcing growth and where you're allowing it. Release your grip on timing, trusting that abundance, like crops, flourishes best when given space to follow its natural season. For in the eternal cycle of prosperity, it is not the force of our will, but the wisdom of our waiting that brings forth the richest harvests. Chapter 9, The Frequency of Fortune. In the misty mountains where ancient caves held secrets of sound, wandering musician Brian Turner sat dejectedly with his broken lyre. Despite mastering every melody known in 7 kingdoms, his performances earned only scattered coppers, while lesser players received gold. "The notes are perfect," he sighed, plucking a string that echoed hollowly. "Why does abundance dance to their music but not mine?" "Because you play the melody," came a voice like crystalline chimes, without matching its frequency. Brian turned to find Heather Garcia, the mysterious sound healer whose music was said to cure ailments of both body and fortune. She held a strange instrument made of clear quartz that hummed with an otherworldly resonance. "Listen," she said, striking a pure tone that seemed to vibrate through reality itself. "Wealth has its own song. When we align with its frequency, prosperity flows naturally." She demonstrated by playing a simple note. As it resonated, golden motes of light seemed to dance in the air. The ancients knew that abundance is not attracted by the complexity of our music, but by our alignment with prosperity's natural vibration. Taking Brian's lyre, she adjusted its strings to match her crystal's tone. "Your instrument was perfectly tuned to the scale of striving," she explained, "but prosperity sings in the key of allowing." As she played his newly tuned lyre, coins began appearing mysteriously in his collection bowl, drawn by the harmonious frequency. "See? Wealth naturally flows toward those who match its resonance." She taught him to feel the subtle vibration of abundance in every note. Under her guidance, his music transformed from desperate performance to pure resonance with prosperity's song. Soon, his melodies attracted not just coins but opportunities, as if fortune itself danced to his tune. "Remember," Heather smiled, "money is merely frozen music. When we vibrate at abundance's frequency, wealth thaws and flows freely." You who read these words understand. Your relationship with prosperity is like an instrument waiting to be tuned. No amount of perfect technique can attract abundance if your inner vibration clashes with wealth's natural frequency. Practice for the next 7 days. Attune yourself to prosperity's song. Each morning, Hum a single pure note that feels aligned with abundance. Notice how different frequencies feel in your body. Adjust your inner tone until you resonate with wealth's natural vibration. For in the eternal symphony of prosperity, it is not the complexity of our efforts, but the purity of our resonance that attracts fortune's flow. Chapter 10. The Art of Receiving. In the bustling trade city of Persepolis, where ancient bazaars twisted like golden serpents through marble streets, young apprentice Brandon Walker struggled at his first day in the House of Abundance. Despite the endless flow of merchants seeking to exchange precious goods, he found himself turning away more trades than he made. "They offer too much," he muttered, clutching his ledger tight. "There must be a catch." "The only catch," came a voice like wind chimes in a summer breeze, "is the tightness of your grip." Brandon turned to find Tiffany Rodriguez, the legendary merchant master, whose wealth was said to flow like water through the city. She stood before a table of precious gems, her open palms offering handfuls to passing traders who gave spices, silks, and gold in return. "Watch," she instructed, releasing a perfect sapphire into a merchant's trembling hands. As he departed with joy, 3 more traders approached, offering even rarer gems. "But you lost the sapphire," Brandon protested. Tiffany smiled. "Did I? Or did my open palms create space for greater abundance to arrive?" She demonstrated by closing one fist tightly. "Try to place anything in this hand." Brandon attempted but found it impossible. "Now understand," she said, "that this is how you approach every exchange. Fingers clench so tight around what you have that nothing new can enter." From her robes she produced a curious object, a hollow bamboo tube that whistled with the wind. The ancients knew that wealth flows like breath through open spaces. A closed fist is like blocked breath. It stagnates what should flow freely. She guided Brandon through the market, teaching him to keep his palms relaxed and open in every exchange. Under her instruction, he learned to release the desperate grip of scarcity and embrace the gentle hold of abundance. Soon his trades multiplied as if by magic, each open-handed exchange bringing greater returns. "See," Tiffany gestured to his flourishing ledger, "prosperity, like water, cannot flow through clenched fingers. You who read these words understand. Your ability to receive wealth is directly proportional to your willingness to release your grip upon it. Just as a closed fist can neither give nor receive, a spirit clenched in scarcity cannot experience abundance's natural flow. Practice for the next 7 days. Cultivate the art of open-handed living. Each morning, hold your palms upward for several breaths, feeling the difference between grasping and receiving. Notice where you clutch too tightly to money, relationships, or outcomes. Practice gentle release, trusting that what flows away creates space for greater abundance to arrive. For in the eternal exchange of prosperity, it is not the strength of our grip, but the openness of our hands that determines how much we can receive. Part 2. The Deepening. Chapter 11. Transmuting Thoughts. In the shimmering heat of ancient Egypt's western desert, where reality itself seemed to waver like a mirage, alchemist Jeremy Collins labored in his hidden cave laboratory. Despite years of grinding minerals and heating elements, his attempts to transmute lead into gold produced nothing but bitter smoke and darker metals. "Another failure," he muttered, watching his latest experiment turn to black sludge. "The ancient formulas must be wrong." "The formulas are perfect," came a voice like wind-blown sand. "But you're working with the wrong elements." Jeremy turned to find Stephanie Nelson, the legendary sage whose mere presence was said to transform fortunes. She stood before his workbench, her eyes reflecting lamplight like molten gold. "Show me your most precious lead," she commanded. Jeremy presented his finest specimen, but Stephanie shook her head. "Not that lead. The thoughts of lack that weigh heavy in your mind, those are the base metals requiring transformation." From her robes, she produced a crystal vial filled with what appeared to be liquid light. The ancients knew that thoughts about wealth are the true metals of alchemy. Each worried thought is lead. Each abundant thought is gold. She dropped a single spark of light into Jeremy's failed experiment. The black sludge instantly transformed into gleaming gold. "See? External alchemy merely mirrors the inner transformation." Under her guidance, Jeremy learned to identify his leaden thoughts. "I never have enough. Wealth is hard to create. I'm not worthy of abundance." Each one she taught him to transmute through the sacred fire of awareness into golden truths. "Watch," she demonstrated, holding a dark thought like lead in her palm. As she shifted her perception, it transformed before his eyes into shining possibility. Soon, Jeremy's cave began filling with actual gold, manifested from his transformed consciousness. "Remember," Stephanie smiled, "the philosopher's stone is not a substance but a practice, the daily transformation of heavy thoughts into golden awareness. You who read these words understand. Your thoughts about money are the true metals awaiting transformation. No external alchemy can create lasting wealth while your mind remains filled with leaden beliefs. Practice for the next 7 days. Become an alchemist of consciousness. Each morning, write down your heaviest thoughts about money. Hold each one in the flame of awareness, watching it transform from lead to gold. Notice how your external reality begins reflecting your inner transmutation. For in the eternal laboratory of prosperity, it is not the transformation of metals, but the alchemy of thought that creates true and lasting gold." Chapter 12, Moving with Flow. In the sacred temple of Angkor, where stone dancers eternally froze mid-motion, temple dancer Amy Rodriguez practiced her movements with rigid precision. Despite mastering every traditional position, her performances left offerings, bowls empty, while less technically perfect dancers received abundant gifts. "Each gesture is exact," she sighed, holding a pose with trembling muscles. "Why does prosperity flow to their dance but not mine?" "Because you move with force," came a voice like rustling silk, "when abundance prefers to dance." Amy turned to find Aaron Phillips, the mysterious movement teacher, whose flowing gestures were said to conduct the very currents of fortune. He stood with impossible grace, his stillness somehow more alive than her motion. "Watch," he said, beginning a simple spiral with his hands. As he moved, golden leaves from the temple trees swirled in perfect harmony with his gesture. Wealth moves like water, following the path of least resistance. From his robes, he produced a silk scarf that seemed to float with ethereal lightness. The ancients knew that prosperity follows natural flows. When we force our movements, we create resistance that wealth must flow around. He demonstrated by having Amy grasp the scarf tightly, trying to control its motion. The silk bunched and tangled, but when she loosened her grip, it danced with beautiful fluidity. "Your dance is perfect," he explained, "but perfection can become a prison. Feel instead how abundance wishes to move through you." Under his guidance, Amy learned to surrender her rigid forms. She discovered that wealth, like dance, requires both structure and flow. As her movements softened, offerings began appearing mysteriously in her bowl, attracted by the natural grace of allowing. See, Erin smiled as golden coins spiraled into her collection vessel like autumn leaves. Prosperity choreographs itself when we learn to move with its rhythm. You who read these words understand. Your relationship with abundance is a sacred dance. No amount of forced movement can attract wealth that prefers to flow through natural grace. Practice. For the next 7 days, become a dancer of prosperity. Each morning, stand in gentle awareness and let your body move as abundance guides it. Notice where you create resistance through forcing. Allow your movements to become as natural as falling leaves, as flowing as water finding its path. For in the eternal dance of prosperity, it is not the perfection of our steps, but the grace of our flow that attracts fortune's embrace. Chapter 13, Healing Scarcity. In the misty valleys of ancient Tibet, where healing herbs grew wild among mountain streams, village healer Michelle Patterson struggled with a peculiar affliction. Though her medicines cured countless ailments, her own prosperity withered like autumn leaves, leaving her storehouse perpetually empty. Another patient healed, she sighed, adding a small copper coin to her meager collection, yet still barely enough to survive. "The illness you treat is not the one you carry," came a voice like mountain wind through pine needles. Michelle turned to find Mark Taylor, the legendary herb gatherer, whose simple baskets somehow always overflowed with the rarest medicines. He stood examining her, nearly empty shelves, with eyes that seemed to peer through bark to root. "Your remedies heal the body," he observed, "but what of the spirit's blockage?" From his worn satchel, he produced a curious root, shaped like a twisted dam. The ancients knew that scarcity thinking is like this, a barrier blocking abundance's natural flow. He led her to a mountain stream where he demonstrated by placing the root across the water. See how wealth, like water, naturally flows, yet watch what thoughts of lack create. The root dam caused the stream to back up, stagnating. "But I give healing freely," Michelle protested. "While believing there isn't enough," Mark replied, removing the root to restore flow. Each thought of scarcity becomes another dam, until prosperity's river can barely trickle through. Under his guidance, Michelle learned to identify the hidden dams in her thinking: fears of lack, beliefs in limitation, doubts about deserving. Each one they ceremonially dissolved using sacred herbs that released their grip on her consciousness. Remember, he smiled as her storehouse began mysteriously filling with abundant medicines. Wealth flows naturally when we remove the barriers of belief. You who read these words understand. Your thoughts of scarcity are spiritual ailments that dam abundance's endless river. No external cure can create lasting prosperity while internal blockages remain. Practice. For the next 7 days, become a healer of your own scarcity consciousness. Each morning, identify one dam of lack thinking in your mind. Create a simple ceremony using water to represent dissolving this barrier. Notice how removing internal blocks allows prosperity's natural flow to resume. For in the eternal river of abundance, it is not the forcing of flow, but the removal of barriers that restores wealth's natural circulation. Chapter 14, Tales that Transform. In ancient Baghdad's labyrinthine marketplace, where stories floated like perfumed smoke between silk-draped stalls, traveling storyteller Elizabeth Martinez wove tales for meager coins. Though her stories enchanted audiences, she noticed that wealthy merchants always seemed to be telling different tales, ones of fortune and abundance. Another day of copper pieces, she sighed, counting her modest earnings. Perhaps I should tell stories of princes instead of paupers. It is not the stories you tell others, came a voice like chapters rustling in an ancient library, but the story you tell yourself. Elizabeth turned to find Sean Edwards, the mysterious keeper of narratives, whose tales were said to reshape reality itself. He sat cross-legged on a worn carpet, surrounded by scrolls that seemed to glow with inner light. "Show me your most precious story," he requested. Elizabeth recited her tale of a clever beggar who survived by wit alone. Sean listened with eyes that reflected candlelight like ancient gold. "Ah," he nodded, "but what story does your heart whisper about your own prosperity?" From his robes he withdrew a blank scroll that shimmered with possibility. The ancients knew that the tales we tell ourselves about wealth become the invisible scripts that life must follow. Each thought is a line in your story scroll. He demonstrated by writing on the mystical parchment. As golden letters appeared, coins materialized in the market around them, as if the very air manifested what was written. See, reality is but a stage upon which our inner stories perform. Under his guidance, Elizabeth learned to recognize her own scarcity tales, stories of never enough, narratives of wealth is for others, chronicles of struggling artists. Each one Sean taught her to revise with the quill of consciousness. "Watch," he smiled, helping her write a new story of abundance. As she crafted tales of prosperity, her copper coins began transforming to silver, then gold, matching her elevated narrative. "Remember," Sean said, gifting her the magical scroll, "you are both author and audience of your prosperity story. You who read these words understand. Your inner narrative about money is the script that abundance must follow. No external story can create lasting wealth while your internal tale speaks of lack." Practice. For the next 7 days, become the author of your prosperity. Each morning, write a single page of your wealth story as you wish it to unfold. Let each word shimmer with possibility. Notice how external reality begins performing the script you write in your heart. For in the eternal library of abundance, it is not the tales we tell others, but the stories we tell ourselves that shape the chapters of our prosperity. Chapter 15, Cosmic Abundance. In the crystalline desert night of ancient Chaldea, where stars hung like golden coins in the velvet vault of heaven, palace astronomer Robert Lewis traced celestial patterns with increasing frustration. Despite mapping countless constellations, the prosperity predictions he made for the king repeatedly failed. "The alignments are perfect," he muttered, adjusting his astrolabe. "Why do my readings not reveal wealth's flow?" "Because you search the stars with eyes of scarcity," came a voice like distant wind chimes. Robert turned to find Kimberly Garcia, the enigmatic star reader whose cosmic interpretations were said to unveil abundance's hidden pathways. She stood barefoot in the sand, her silver hair reflecting starlight like a living constellation. "Look," she said, drawing a circle in the sand. As she traced it, distant stars seemed to pulse in harmony with her motion. The ancients knew that abundance isn't written in individual stars, but in the infinite spaces between them. From her robes, she produced a crystal lens that transformed the night sky into rivers of flowing light. Scarcity is an illusion created by focusing on separate points of light. Abundance is the invisible force connecting everything. She demonstrated by having Robert view the sky first normally, seeing individual stars, then through the lens, revealing the luminous web linking all celestial bodies. Your calculations are precise, she explained, but precision can blind us to prosperity's greater pattern. The universe itself is made of infinite abundance. Even the void between stars teems with invisible energy. Under her guidance, Robert learned to read the sky anew. He discovered that wealth flows not through isolated stellar positions, but through the cosmic dance of interconnection. As his vision expanded, his predictions began manifesting abundant outcomes, drawn from the unlimited potential he now perceived. See? Kimberly smiled as golden opportunities began aligning like constellations in his life. Prosperity is the natural state of the universe. Scarcity exists only in minds too narrow to perceive abundance's infinite expanse. You who read these words understand. Your perception of wealth's limitations is a cosmic misunderstanding. No amount of precise calculation can reveal abundance that exists everywhere when you attune to its universal presence. Practice. For the next 7 nights, become a reader of abundance's celestial script. Spend time under the stars, first seeing them as separate points, then allowing your vision to soften until you perceive the luminous web connecting everything. Notice how this shift in perception reveals prosperity's infinite presence in your own life. For in the eternal dance of the cosmos, it is not the counting of individual stars, but the recognition of universal abundance that aligns us with wealth's infinite flow. Chapter 16. Brushstrokes of Prosperity. In ancient Persia, where pigments worth their weight in gold transformed blank walls into windows to paradise, court painter Ashley Campbell faced a peculiar challenge. Though her visible technique was flawless, the radiance she envisioned remained stubbornly absent from her work. "The colors are perfect," she sighed, studying her latest palace mural, yet something essential eludes the brush. "Because you paint only what eyes can see," came a voice like silk sliding over marble. Ashley turned to find Kevin Martinez, the legendary color merchant whose mysterious pigments were said to capture the invisible essence of things. He stood before her mural, seeing not the surface, but something deeper that made his eyes dance with golden light. "Watch," he said, removing a seemingly empty vial from his collection. With practiced grace, he poured nothing onto her palette, yet the existing colors began to shimmer with new vitality. "The ancients knew that all manifestation begins in the invisible," he explained, guiding her brush through the air inches before the wall. "Like wealth itself, every masterpiece exists first as pure intention before taking form." From his satchel, he produced a crystal brush that painted with light itself. "See how prosperity follows the same principle," he demonstrated by drawing luminous patterns that gradually solidified into actual gems. First, the unseen intention, he guided her hands through the motion, then the visible manifestation. Under his tutelage, Ashley learned to paint the invisible essence of abundance before applying physical colors. She discovered that wealth, like art, required first creating in the subtle realms before expressing in the material world. "Feel how the universe itself is but a canvas." Kevin smiled as her paintings began attracting patrons offering unprecedented commissions. "And prosperity is the art of allowing intention to flow through you into form." You who read these words understand. Your visible wealth is but the final layer of an invisible painting. No external technique can create lasting abundance without first crafting it in the realm of pure intention. Practice. For the next 7 days, become an artist of prosperity. Before any action to attract wealth, spend time painting your intention in the invisible realm. Use your imagination to feel, see, and craft the essence of abundance before seeking its physical manifestation. Notice how reality begins matching your inner artwork. For in the eternal gallery of manifestation, it is not the visible strokes, but the invisible intention that creates prosperity's masterpiece. Chapter 17, The True Treasure. In the torchlit caverns beneath Alexandria's great library, where ancient wisdom echoed in whispered riddles, philosopher Justin Collins hunched over crackling manuscripts, seeking the legendary philosopher's stone. His hands were stained with alchemical formulas, yet transmutation's secret remained elusive. "Another failed attempt," he muttered, watching his latest experiment fade to ordinary lead. "Perhaps the ancients were wrong about gold's creation." "Because you seek the lesser transformation," came a voice like distant temple bells. Justin turned to find Brittany Rodriguez, the enigmatic wisdom keeper, whose understanding of alchemy's deeper mysteries was said to transcend mere metallurgy. She sat before a simple clay bowl filled with water, yet its surface rippled with impossible golden light. "Show me your greatest work," she requested. Justin demonstrated his most advanced transmutation formula. Brittany watched not the materials, but the space around them, as if seeing invisible currents of possibility. "Ah," she nodded, "but what within you remains untransmuted?" From her robes, she withdrew a perfectly ordinary stone that somehow contained all colors at once. The ancients knew that the philosopher's stone was never about changing lead to gold. It was about transforming our relationship with abundance itself. She placed the stone in his hands. As he held it, Justin felt his perceptions shift. Suddenly, he saw how his desperate pursuit of gold's formula had blocked the very abundance he sought to create. See, the true transmutation occurs not in the crucible, but in consciousness itself. Under her guidance, Justin learned to recognize his own lead, beliefs about wealth requiring forced transformation. Each one Brittany taught him to transmute, not through external formulas, but through internal alchemy. "Watch," she smiled, showing him how the water in her simple bowl turned to gold, not through complex procedures, but through transformed perception. As his understanding shifted, the very air around him seemed to shimmer with abundance's presence. "Remember," Brittany said, gifting him the paradoxical stone, "you are both the alchemist and the metal being transformed. You who read these words understand. Your relationship with abundance is the true philosopher's stone. No external formula can create lasting wealth while your inner elements remain untransmuted. Practice for the next 7 days. Become an alchemist of consciousness. Each evening, place a simple stone in a bowl of water. As you meditate upon it, allow your perceptions of wealth to transmute naturally. Notice how external abundance begins reflecting your internal transformation. For in the eternal laboratory of manifestation, it is not the changing of metals, but the transformation of mind that reveals prosperity's golden truth. Chapter 18, Reflections of Worth. An ancient Damascus, where mirror makers guarded secrets passed down through generations, wealthy merchant David Edwards stood before his collection of polished bronze mirrors, troubled by the distorted reflections staring back at him. Despite his overflowing coffers, each mirror showed a different version of lack. "These finest mirrors in all Damascus," he muttered, "yet none showed true prosperity's face." "Because you seek reflection before recognition," came a voice like wind chimes in morning mist. David turned to find Christina Phillips, the mysterious mirror maker, whose creations were said to reflect not appearances, but essence. She stood examining his collection with eyes that seemed to see through the bronze into something deeper. "Tell me," she said, running her fingers along a mirror's edge, "what wealth do you recognize within yourself?" Before he could answer, she produced a small mirror of strange material that seemed to ripple like water, yet held form like metal. "Look," she instructed. As David gazed into its depths, he saw not his physical reflection, but the shadows of doubt clouding his inner worth. Each fear and limitation appeared as a veil, dimming abundance's natural radiance. "Now watch," Christina said, breathing gently on the mirror's surface. As the mist of her breath cleared, the reflection transformed, revealing layers of inner richness David had never acknowledged. The ancients knew that external abundance can only reflect the wealth we first recognize within, she explained, showing him how to clear the mirrors of his perception. "Your coffers overflow, yet your inner mirrors remain clouded by unworthiness." Under her guidance, David learned to polish the reflecting surfaces of his consciousness. He discovered that prosperity's true face appeared only when he recognized his inherent value beyond all possessions. "See?" Christina smiled as his entire collection of mirrors began showing new reflections of abundance. External wealth simply mirrors the recognition of inner worth. From her robes, she produced a final mirror made of light itself. "Keep this," she said, "to remember that you are not the reflection, but the source of all you seek to see." You who read these words understand. Your external circumstances merely reflect your internal recognition of worth. No amount of accumulated wealth can show prosperity's true face until you first recognize it within yourself. Practice. For the next 7 days, become a polisher of inner mirrors. Each morning, sit before a mirror and look beyond physical reflection. Breathe away the mist of doubts and limitations until you recognize the inherent wealth of your true nature. Notice how external abundance begins reflecting this inner recognition. For in the eternal hall of mirrors, it is not the quality of reflection, but the clarity of recognition that reveals prosperity's perfect image. Chapter 19, Sacred Prosperity. In a remote mountain monastery where prayer flags danced with mountain mists, young monk Tyler Turner struggled with an unexpected dilemma. Though he had renounced worldly possessions, the monastery's declining donations threatened its ancient scrolls and healing work. How can we serve without resources, he wondered, watching another pilgrim leave empty-handed, when they couldn't provide the traditional healing herbs. "Your attachment to non-attachment becomes its own chain," came a voice like snow falling on temple bells. Tyler turned to find Abbot Samantha Garcia, whose presence filled spaces with inexplicable abundance, despite owning nothing. She sat serenely before an empty bowl that somehow felt fuller than any treasure chest. "Watch," she said, pouring water into the bowl until it overflowed. "See how water clings to nothing, yet flows everywhere? This is prosperity's true nature." She produced 3 coins, arranging them in a triangle. "Close your fist," she instructed. Tyler gripped the coins tightly. "Now give them away." He struggled to release them without opening his hand. "Impossible," he admitted. "Just so," she nodded. "Attachment to either having or not having creates the same blockage. True renunciation is not rejection of abundance, but release of our grip on its flow." She demonstrated by placing a coin in her palm. Instead of grasping or pushing it away, she simply let it rest there. Mysteriously, more coins began appearing, flowing through her open hand like a stream. The ancients knew that prosperity follows heaven's law, she explained, while the coins circled like planets around her palm. Like air, it must be free to come and go. Your worry about the monastery's needs has become a dam against abundance's natural current. Under her guidance, Tyler learned that genuine non-attachment meant neither pursuing nor rejecting wealth. As his grip relaxed, he noticed pilgrims spontaneously offering more than enough for the monastery's needs. See? Samantha smiled as supplies began flowing effortlessly to their storehouse. Sacred prosperity comes not through gain or loss, but through becoming like the sky, holding space for all while clinging to nothing. You who read these words understand. True abundance requires neither pursuit nor rejection. It flows naturally when we release our grip on both having and not having. Practice. For the next 7 days, become like the mountain sky. Each time money comes or goes, practice neither grasping nor pushing away. Simply hold space for prosperity's natural flow. Notice how releasing attachment paradoxically attracts abundance's free movement through your life. For in the eternal treasury of wisdom, it is not the possession of wealth, but the release of resistance that reveals prosperity's sacred path. Chapter 20, Steering Toward Abundance. In the bustling port of ancient Phoenicia, where trade winds carried fortunes across vast seas, navigator Jonathan Wright stood puzzled at his charts. Despite his mastery of stars and currents, his merchant vessels seemed to miss the richest trading routes. The winds favor other ships, he sighed, watching another captain's vessel return heavy with exotic treasures. Because you fight the currents instead of flowing with them, came a voice like waves caressing shore stones. Jonathan turned to find Megan Rodriguez, the mysterious harbor master, whose vessels always seemed to catch fortune's favorable winds. She stood before a peculiar compass that pointed not to magnetic north, but toward something unseen. "Show me your navigation method," she requested. Jonathan demonstrated his careful calculations of wind and tide. Megan watched not his charts, but the space between them, as if seeing invisible currents of possibility. "Ah," she nodded. "You plot courses to wealth instead of aligning with its natural flow." From her robes, she withdrew a crystal bowl filled with water. Dropping a leaf upon its surface, she blew gently. The leaf danced across the water, finding perfect paths between invisible currents. "See how it neither chases nor retreats? This is prosperity's true navigation. Wealth, like wind, cannot be commanded, but it can be skillfully sailed." Under her guidance, Jonathan learned to read abundance's hidden currents. Each trading route, she showed him, was like the leaf's dance. Success came not from forcing paths, but from elegant positioning. "Watch." She smiled, revealing how her strange compass pointed toward opportunities that existed in potential, like winds gathering before a storm. As his understanding shifted, Jonathan began seeing trading patterns he'd missed before. "Remember," Megan said, gifting him the mysterious compass, "you are not the captain forcing wealth's winds, but the navigator dancing with its natural flow. You who read these words understand. Abundance moves like ocean currents, invisible yet constant. No amount of forcing can control its winds, but skillful positioning allows its natural flow to carry you toward prosperity's shores. Practice for the next 7 days. Become a navigator of abundance's invisible currents. Each morning, hold a bowl of water and float a leaf upon its surface. As you blow gently, observe how it finds efficient paths without struggle. Notice how opportunities begin flowing naturally when you position yourself with instead of against prosperity's winds. For in the eternal sea of manifestation, it is not the forcing of fortune, but the art of alignment that reveals wealth's perfect course. Part 3, The Embodiment. Chapter 21, Future Abundance. In the sacred temple of Delphi, where time's veils hung thin as morning mist, young Oracle Amber Martinez struggled with her gift. Though she could glimpse shadowy visions of what may come, prosperity's path remained frustratingly unclear. "The future shifts like smoke," she sighed, watching incense spirals dance through shafts of dawn light. "How can we prophesy abundance that hasn't yet manifested?" "Because tomorrow's wealth already exists in today's seed," came a voice like ancient bells, echoing through time itself. Amber turned to find Nathan Lewis, the legendary keeper of prophecies, whose predictions manifested with uncanny precision. He stood before a pool of still water that somehow reflected events yet to come. "Observe," he said, dropping a single grain of sand into the pool. As ripples spread outward, each ring showed a different potential future, some rich with abundance, others barren with lack. "Your gift reaches for tomorrow's fruits," he noted, "instead of nurturing today's roots." From his robes he produced a crystal vessel filled with swirling mist. Within its depths, Amber saw countless golden threads stretching from present choices into future possibilities. "The ancients knew that what will be already exists in what is," he explained, while the threads wove intricate patterns of cause and effect. "Future abundance isn't predicted. It's pulled into reality through present alignment." Under his guidance, Amber learned to see how each moment contained seeds of countless prosperous futures. Success came not from forecasting fortune, but from recognizing and nurturing its potential in the eternal now. "Watch." Nathan smiled as he showed her how to reach through time's veils, not to grasp at future wealth, but to align with its presence in the present. The pool's surface began showing only abundant possibilities. "Remember," he said, presenting her with the mystical vessel, "you are not a predictor of prosperity, but a bridge between its potential and its manifestation. You who read these words understand future abundance exists now as possibility awaiting recognition. No amount of fortune-telling can match the power of present alignment with prosperity's eternal potential. Practice. For the next 7 days, become a keeper of abundance's seeds. Each evening, hold a single grain of sand and contemplate how today's choices ripple into tomorrow's reality. Drop it into a bowl of water and observe how your relationship with wealth in this moment shapes its future manifestation. For in the eternal temple of time, it is not the prediction of prosperity, but the recognition of its present potential that reveals abundance's destined unfolding. Chapter 22, Polishing Inner Gems. In the shadowed valleys of ancient Lanka, where precious stones slept in earthen wombs, Master Jeweler Crystal Edwards faced her greatest challenge. Though skilled at revealing external beauty, she struggled to unlock the true radiance within each gem. "Some stones resist polish no matter how I work them," she sighed, setting aside another dulled ruby. Her finest techniques seemed to dim rather than brighten their inner fire. "Because you polish the surface before awakening the core," came a voice like light dancing through Crystal. Crystal turned to find Jacob Garcia, the mysterious gem merchant, whose stones seemed to glow with their own inner luminescence. He held what appeared to be an ordinary rock, yet something within it pulsed with hidden possibility. "Watch," he said, placing the stone in a bowl of clear water. As moonlight touched its surface, the water began to shimmer with colors that emerged from within the rock itself. The ancients knew that every stone, like every soul, contains trapped light, he explained, while rainbow patterns danced across temple walls. Your tools try to force beauty from outside, instead of calling it from within. From his satchel, he produced 3 identical rough diamonds. Taking the first, he immediately began polishing its surface. The stone remained stubbornly dull. With the second, he held it in silent communion before touching it. It sparkled faintly. But with the third, he first awakened its inner fire through a sacred humming that made the diamond pulse with its own light. Only then did he begin to polish, and the stone blazed like a captured star. "See?" Jacob smiled as the diamond's radiance filled the room. "True mastery isn't about imposing beauty, but revealing what already exists within." Under his guidance, Crystal learned that each gem required its own awakening before refinement. As her approach shifted, stones that once resisted her touch began revealing their hidden splendor. "Remember," he said, gifting her the luminous diamond, "you are not creating beauty, but midwifing light that yearns to shine. You who read these words understand your talents are like uncut gems containing trapped radiance. No amount of external polishing can match the power of first awakening their inner light. Practice for the next 7 days. Become a jeweler of inner gifts. Each morning, hold a simple stone and feel its hidden potential. Before attempting to manifest your talents, first awaken their inner fire through quiet communion with their essence. Notice how abilities that once resisted development begin revealing their natural brilliance. For in the eternal treasury of gifts, it is not the forcing of beauty, but the revelation of inner light that releases true abundance's glow. Chapter 23, Innovation and Abundance. In the forgotten valleys of ancient Indus, where civilization's first tools took shape, village inventor Gregory Phillips stared frustrated at his workshop, filled with failed creations. Though his hands could craft intricate mechanisms, his innovations seemed to miss their mark in the marketplace. "Others see problems to solve," he muttered, arranging his collection of curious contraptions. "Yet my solutions find no homes." "Because you seek problems instead of possibilities," came a voice like wind through wind chimes. Gregory turned to find Rachel Martinez, the legendary craftswoman whose strange inventions seemed to answer questions no one had thought to ask. She stood before an array of ordinary objects arranged in extraordinary ways. "Observe," she said, taking a simple clay pot and placing it upside down. Beneath it, she'd lit a small flame. As warm air rose through a clever series of channels she had carved, beautiful music emerged from the pot's resonating chamber. "Most see a vessel for carrying," she smiled as the melody filled the air. "But abundance vision sees infinite possibilities in everything." From her robe, she produced a handful of common seeds. Placing them before Gregory's failed inventions, she began rearranging both in surprising combinations. Suddenly, his useless devices found new purpose as elegant solutions for planting, watering, and tending. The ancients knew that scarcity thinking asks what problems need solving, she explained while transforming his workshop into a garden of innovation. But abundance thinking asks what possibilities await discovery. Under her guidance, Gregory learned to see through eyes of infinite potential. Each object contained countless opportunities. Each failure held seeds of unexpected success. His creativity began flowing not from need, but from possibility's endless dance. "Watch." Rachel smiled, showing how a broken water wheel could become a meditation timer, a failed fishing net could become a sky garden. As his perspective shifted, innovations that once eluded him emerged naturally. "Remember," she said, gifting him the musical pot, "you are not a solver of problems, but a revealer of possibilities that already exist. You who read these words understand. True innovation flows not from lack's desperate search, but from abundance's playful exploration. No amount of problem solving can match the power of possibility seeing." Practice for the next 7 days. Become an alchemist of ordinary objects. Each morning, choose 3 common items and explore their hidden potential. Before seeking solutions, first see the infinite possibilities within everything. Notice how innovations begin flowing naturally when you look through abundance's lens. For in the eternal workshop of creation, it is not the fixing of what's broken, but the revealing of what's possible that manifests prosperity's endless forms. And Chapter 24, The Scent of Success. In the sacred perfume temples of ancient Memphis, where fragrant mysteries floated on incense-laden air, court perfumer Vanessa Rodriguez struggled with her latest royal commission. Though skilled at blending physical scents, she could not capture the elusive essence of success her patron demanded. "How can one bottle prosperity's perfume?" She sighed, surrounded by countless vials of precious oils. "No combination of essences seems to attract abundance." "Because you seek to blend what already emanates," came a voice like lotus petals falling on still water. Vanessa turned to find Anthony Turner, the ethereal essence maker, whose peculiar fragrances seemed to manifest desires rather than merely please the senses. He stood before an arrangement of empty vessels that somehow filled the air with invisible potency. "Watch," he said, taking an unscented candle and lighting it beside a flowering jasmine. As the flame's warmth grew, the flower released its fragrance more intensely, drawing moths and night-flying pollinators from distant gardens. "The flower doesn't try to attract," he explained while more creatures gathered. "It simply expresses its inner nature, and abundance naturally follows." From his robes, he produced a crystal phial filled with clear liquid that seemed to shift like morning mist. "Smell," he instructed. When Vanessa inhaled, she experienced not a scent, but a feeling of absolute certainty in her own worth. "The ancients knew that confidence has its own fragrance," he revealed as opportunities began mysteriously appearing. Merchants seeking commissions, nobles requesting blends. Those who trust their inner essence naturally attract abundance, like flowers draw bees without effort. Under his guidance, Vanessa learned to infuse her creations not with forced attractive properties, but with authentic expressions of inner worth. As her approach shifted, her perfumes began carrying the subtle essence of manifestation itself. "Remember," he said, presenting her with the crystal phial, "you are not creating attraction, but allowing your natural abundance to perfume the world." You who read these words understand. Confidence emanates an invisible fragrance that abundance cannot resist. No external scent can match the attractive power of inner certainty. Practice for the next 7 days. Become an essence maker of inner worth. Each morning, light a candle and sit quietly, allowing your natural confidence to fill the space like perfume. Notice how opportunities begin appearing, drawn to your authentic fragrance of success. For in the eternal temple of manifestation, it is not the forcing of attraction, but the natural emanation of certainty that draws prosperity's sweet nectar. Chapter 25, Designing Prosperity. In the sacred city of Heliopolis, where golden ratios whispered their secrets through every colonnade, palace architect Trevor Collins faced an impossible task. Though his buildings were masterpieces of physical precision, they failed to capture the mysterious harmony that made ancient temples radiate with prosperous energy. "The measurements are perfect," he muttered, reviewing his latest shrine plans. "Yet something essential eludes my grasp." "Because you measured distance instead of resonance," came a voice like crystalline geometry taking flight. Trevor turned to find Diana Phillips, the mystical geometry teacher, whose structures seemed to pulse with living mathematics. She stood tracing invisible patterns in the air that somehow left shimmering traces of light. "Observe," she said, taking a simple piece of twine and forming it into a triangle. As she adjusted its angles with subtle movements, the air within began to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. "The ancients knew that prosperity follows sacred patterns," she explained, while the triangle's inner light grew stronger. "Wealth flows not through rigid forms, but through living geometries that dance with divine proportion." From her satchel she produced 3 small stones, arranging them in various patterns. When placed randomly, they sat inert. But when positioned according to hidden harmonies, they began humming with subtle energy that attracted other objects into perfect orbital alignment. "See how abundance naturally arranges itself." She smiled as more stones rolled into sacred configuration. "Your buildings must become instruments of celestial geometry, not just containers of space." Under her guidance, Trevor learned to feel the invisible mathematics of manifestation. Each angle could either amplify or dampen prosperity's flow. His designs began incorporating the secret rhythms that make wealth feel naturally at home. "Watch," Diana demonstrated, using a crystal to project geometric light patterns. Where certain shapes intersected, small objects would mysteriously gather, drawn by unseen forces of sacred proportion. "Remember," she said, gifting him the luminous crystal, "you are not imposing order, but aligning with the divine architecture of abundance itself." You who read these words understand. Prosperity follows patterns written in the very fabric of creation. No amount of forced structure can match the power of aligning with wealth's natural geometry. Practice for the next 7 days. Become an architect of sacred space. Each morning, arrange 3 objects in your environment, feeling for the subtle harmonies that make them click into prosperous alignment. Notice how abundance begins naturally flowing when you attune to its divine proportions. For in the eternal blueprint of manifestation, it is not the building of walls, but the channeling of sacred geometry that constructs prosperity's perfect temple. On Chapter 26, Celestial Timing. In the star-scattered deserts of ancient Chaldea, where celestial rhythms painted their wisdom across night's canvas, royal astronomer Miranda Garcia studied her precisely calculated charts with growing frustration. Though her predictions of planetary movements proved flawless, the timing of prosperity's flow remained mysteriously elusive. "The alignments are perfect," she sighed, tracking Venus through its golden dance. "Yet abundance arrives and departs like a wayward comet, following no pattern I can grasp." "Because you plot positions instead of rhythms," came a voice like starlight crystallized into sound. Miranda turned to find Patrick Edwards, the legendary timekeeper, whose sundials seemed to measure the heartbeat of fortune itself. He stood watching grains of sand fall through an unusual hourglass, where time appeared to flow in spirals rather than straight lines. "Observe," he said, releasing a drop of water into a still pool. As ripples expanded outward, nearby objects began moving in unexpected patterns, some drawing closer while others temporarily retreated. "The ancients knew that wealth flows in waves," he explained, while the ripples created intricate interference patterns. "Like celestial bodies, prosperity follows orbital laws that cannot be forced or hastened." From his robes, he produced a strange astronomical device with overlapping rings that moved in complex cycles. When certain alignments occurred, small gems would mysteriously appear in its center, only to vanish if one tried to grasp them too quickly. "See how abundance has its own timing," he smiled as another gem manifested. "Your calculations must honor the rhythm of receiving, not just the mechanics of movement." Under his guidance, Miranda learned to feel the cosmic pulses of manifestation. Each planetary cycle carried unique prosperity frequencies that required patience and precision to navigate. "Watch," Patrick demonstrated, using the device to show how forced timing scattered the gems, while relaxed attention drew them naturally. "Wealth, like stars, cannot be commanded, only understood and gracefully joined in its dance." "Remember," he said, gifting her the celestial instrument, "you are not controlling time's flow, but aligning with abundance's eternal rhythms." You who read these words understand. Prosperity follows cosmic timing that no amount of forcing can accelerate. True wealth manifests not through calculated grasping, but through graceful synchronization with fortune's natural cycles. Practice. For the next 7 days, become a timekeeper of abundance. Each evening, spend time stargazing while contemplating the natural rhythm of receiving in your life. Notice how prosperity flows more freely when you align with its celestial timing, rather than demanding immediate results. For in the eternal observatory of manifestation, it is not the prediction of movements, but the attunement to divine timing that reveals wealth's perfect orbital dance. Chapter 27, The Final Veil. In the hidden valley of the thousand veils, where reality shimmered like silk in summer heat, wandering mystic Derek Martinez sought the legendary teacher who could reveal money's deepest mysteries. Though he had mastered many manifestation practices, abundance still felt like a distant mirage. "So many techniques, yet wealth remains veiled," he mused, watching light dance through gossamer curtains that seemed to separate different planes of existence. "Because you seek to part veils that exist only in perception," came a voice like wind through ancient chimes. Derek turned to find Jasmine Rodriguez, known as the Unveiler, whose presence seemed to make reality itself more transparent. She sat surrounded by shimmering veils that somehow revealed more truth when they moved than when still. "Watch," she said, lifting a crystalline bowl filled with water. As she tilted it, the liquid remained perfectly still, while the world around it appeared to flow and shift. "Which is moving, the water or the world?" "The world moves," Derek answered confidently. "Does it?" she smiled. "Or does your perception move while truth remains still?" From beneath the folds of her robe, she produced a simple mirror. But unlike ordinary reflections, it showed not just physical forms, but the abundant essence flowing through all things. "See how wealth saturates every atom?" she demonstrated, turning the mirror slowly. "The veils of scarcity exist only in our minds, obscuring the prosperity that perpetually surrounds us." Under her guidance, Derek learned to see through the illusions of lack. each veil dissolved not through technique, but through recognition of abundance's omnipresent nature. "Observe," Jasmine instructed, dropping a seed into bare soil. Instead of watching the surface, she held the mirror to reveal countless invisible threads of possibility already connecting the seed to its future abundance. "Remember," she said, presenting him with the truth-showing mirror, "you are not attracting wealth, but recognizing the abundance that has always been here. You who read these words understand. The final secret is that there is no secret. Money's magnetic power lies not in attraction, but in removing the veils that hide prosperity's eternal presence. Practice. For the next 7 days, become an unveiler of abundance. Each morning, sit quietly and imagine transparent veils of scarcity dissolving one by one. Notice how wealth becomes visible not through seeking but through seeing what was always there. For in the eternal temple of truth, it is not the pursuit of prosperity, but the recognition of abundance's constant presence that parts the final veil." Chapter 28, Becoming the Magnet. In the crystal caves of Mount Lumina, where light danced through translucent walls in mesmerizing patterns, advanced student Lindsay Phillips sought answers in her final days of training. Though her manifestation abilities had grown strong, she still felt like she was trying to attract prosperity rather than embody it. "Even my most powerful techniques feel like reaching," she confided to the cave walls, watching their ethereal glow pulse in response to her words. "Because you remain the seeker rather than the sought," came a voice that seemed to emerge from the crystal formations themselves. Lindsay turned to find Master Gabriel Garcia, the legendary teacher who spoke only in his final days of earthly presence. He sat cross-legged on a crystal platform, his form seeming to shimmer between solid and luminous states. "Observe," he said, placing a lodestone in the center of several iron filings. Rather than the stone pulling the filings, its mere presence caused them to arrange themselves in perfect patterns around it. "The true master does not chase," he demonstrated as more metal pieces danced into formation. "They simply embody such profound resonance that abundance cannot resist approaching." From within the cave wall, he extracted a perfectly formed crystal that glowed with inner light. As he held it, precious gems began emerging from the surrounding rock, drawn to its radiance. "See how attraction dissolves into being." He smiled as more treasures surfaced naturally. "Your journey was never about becoming a better attractor, but about remembering your nature as the very magnet itself." Under his final teachings, Lindsay learned to shift from doing to being. Each breath became not a technique, but a remembrance of her magnetic essence. "Watch," Gabriel whispered, his form becoming increasingly translucent. He placed the glowing crystal in her hands, and suddenly she felt herself becoming the source of the attraction rather than its student. "Remember," he said, his presence now barely visible, "you were never meant to master attraction. You are meant to remember that you are attraction itself." You who read these words understand. The ultimate secret of magnetic wealth lies not in perfecting your pull, but in embodying such deep presence that prosperity naturally organizes itself around your being. Practice for the next 7 days. Release all techniques of attraction. Instead, sit in perfect stillness for a few minutes each morning, feeling yourself as the living lodestone of abundance. Notice how wealth begins arranging itself around you when you embody magnetic presence rather than magnetic pursuit. For in the eternal dance of manifestation, it is not the mastery of attraction, but the remembrance of your magnetic nature that makes abundance your constant companion. Chapter 29, The Complete Teaching. In the mist-shrouded valley of the 7 waterfalls, where wisdom flowed in eternal cascades of understanding, elder sage Victoria Edwards tended her simple garden of enlightenment. Though thousands had sought her teachings on wealth's mysteries, she waited for the one who would receive the final truth. As she scattered seeds that seemed to float rather than fall, humble student Wesley Martinez approached, carrying nothing but an empty bowl. "I have studied with 100 masters," he said softly, "yet still I seek the ultimate method for attracting abundance." Victoria smiled, touching a flower that instantly bloomed, withered, and bloomed again in endless cycles. "And therein lies the very veil that blinds you." From the soil she lifted what appeared to be an ordinary root. Yet as she brushed away the earth, it revealed itself as pure gold, its tendrils stretching through the entire garden. "See how wealth grows," she demonstrated, revealing more golden roots beneath every plant. Not through cultivation, but through recognition of what already flourishes. Under her guidance, Wesley discovered that each attempt to master abundance had actually moved him further from his natural state of prosperity. Like a fish studying the art of swimming, his very effort created the separation he sought to overcome. "Observe," she whispered, leading him to a pool fed by the 7 falls. The surface reflected not his physical form, but his true nature, a being of pure abundance radiating infinite prosperity. "The complete teaching is that there is nothing to teach," Victoria revealed, her words carrying the weight of centuries. "Each technique, each practice, each method exists only to exhaust the seeker until they collapse into the recognition of their original nature." From the water she lifted a single drop that contained the reflection of all 7 waterfalls. "Your natural state is unlimited wealth. Any belief otherwise is learned forgetfulness." "Remember," she said, placing the drop in his empty bowl where it somehow filled the vessel to overflowing, "you are not learning to attract abundance. You are unlearning the illusion that you were ever separate from it." Oh, wow. You who read these words understand. The complete teaching of magnetic wealth reveals that there is nothing to attract. Your essential nature is prosperity itself, merely awaiting your recognition. Practice for the next 7 days. Release all practices. Instead, rest in the simple awareness of your natural abundant state. Notice how dropping the search for prosperity allows your inherent wealth to reveal itself. For in the eternal garden of truth, the final teaching is that there was never anything to learn, only the remembrance of what you have always been. Chapter 30, The Eternal Circle. In the ancient oasis of eternal waters, where knowledge flowed in endless cycles, like the spring that had never run dry, newly awakened teacher Kyle Rodriguez sat beneath a circle of wind-carved arches. Though he had transcended seeking, the universe had brought him his first student, Monica Phillips, a soul ready to complete her own circle of understanding. "I've mastered many manifestation methods," Monica began, arranging her collection of prosperity tokens before him. "Yet something feels incomplete." Kyle smiled, taking a handful of sand and letting it fall in a perfect circle. "Watch how each grain knows exactly where to land without effort or instruction." From his robe he produced a simple clay bowl, weathered by centuries. As he filled it with water from the eternal spring, the liquid formed a perfect mirror of the sky above. "See how the water naturally reflects the infinite without being taught." But what of the techniques, the practices? Monica asked, gesturing to her tokens. Kyle lifted an ancient brass compass whose needle spun in impossible patterns. These tools are like teaching a flower which way to grow toward the sun. They exist only until we remember we are the sun itself. Under the arches, he demonstrated by placing a seed in the sand. Instead of nurturing it, he simply sat in perfect stillness. Within moments, a golden flower bloomed, fed not by effort, but by recognition of its true nature. The final truth reveals itself as the first he shared, his voice carrying ancient echoes. We begin as seekers of wealth, transform into its attractor, only to discover we were its source all along. Taking the clay bowl, he poured its water into the sand. Instead of being absorbed, it formed a shimmering pool that reflected not their faces, but their eternal, abundant essence. Remember, he said, watching understanding dawn in Monica's eyes, the circle completes not through gathering, but through releasing all that obscured your original nature as prosperity's source. You who read these words understand the eternal circle closes where it began, in the recognition that you were never separate from abundance. Your journey ends where it started, but now you perceive with eyes that have always seen. Practice for these final 7 days. Sit by flowing water each morning. Release every technique, every method, every practice you've accumulated. Feel yourself as the source from which abundance naturally flows. Notice how prosperity emanates from your being without effort or attraction. For in the eternal oasis of truth, the circle completes itself when the seeker realizes they were always the spring from which all abundance flows. Conclusion. In the ancient temple of infinite reflections, where countless seekers had discovered their true nature across millennia, Master Benjamin Phillips stood before a wall of shimmering mirrors that seemed to capture every teaching ever shared within these sacred halls. His student Jessica Martinez knelt before a pool of still water at the temple's heart, where legend said the first lessons of magnetic abundance were revealed to humanity. I have one final question, Master, Jessica said, watching ripples form in the perfectly smooth surface, though nothing had touched it. Why do so many forget their natural state of abundance? Benjamin lifted an ornate hourglass whose sand flowed upward instead of down. Observe how the grains rise against their expected nature, he demonstrated, like humans who believe they must fight gravity to elevate their prosperity. From an alcove, he retrieved a crystal prism that had witnessed 10,000 teachings. As sunlight passed through, it projected not colors, but scenes from every lesson ever shared in the temple. Merchants discovering stillness, shepherds learning trust, weavers seeing patterns of abundance. The forgetting is part of the remembering, he explained, turning the prism so the images danced across the temple walls. Each soul must walk the circle of seeking to appreciate the treasure they carried from birth. Jessica watched as the scenes shifted to show students across ages having the same revelation, that they were never separate from the prosperity they sought. Then why teach at all? She asked. Benjamin smiled, releasing a white dove that transformed into pure light before returning to solid form. For the same reason we place mirrors in the temple, he said, not to create reflection, but to help others recognize what already exists. The hourglass sand reversed again, and the prism scenes merged into a single golden light that filled the temple. The eternal cycle continues not because teaching is needed, he shared, but because remembering is such a beautiful dance. You who have walked this path understand these teachings exist not to give you something new, but to reveal what you have always possessed. The temple's wisdom echoes through ages, not to create abundance, but to celebrate its eternal presence in all beings. Practice in these final moments together. Sit in whatever space you occupy now. Feel how it transforms into a temple of infinite reflections. Let every technique dissolve into the simple recognition that you are and have always been the source of all prosperity. For in the eternal temple of existence, each seeker eventually becomes a mirror, reflecting back to others the abundance that was never truly lost, only momentarily forgotten in the magnificent game of remembering. If you enjoyed this exclusive audiobook, I handpicked this next book which will change your life.